Hi there, welcome to Still Learning, the space where we celebrate growth in all its messy, beautiful, and raw forms. I'm your host, Fortune Fowley, and if you're here, you're right where you need to be because here we're embracing the beauty of being works in progress. In today's episode, we're having an honest conversation about your condition, the state of your mind, body, and soul, and why it matters more than you think. I hope this conversation encourages you to slow down, take inventory, and return to the one who restores. Hi guys, happy Still Morning Monday. So happy to have you here. I hope your morning is off to a great start. I want to start today's conversation by asking us a question. And honestly, I think this question is quite fitting for how I feel today and how I've been feeling the last couple of days, maybe even weeks. So the question I'm posing to both you and myself today is, what is your condition right now? And I'll go ahead and answer first. I have been the last couple of days fighting off a cold. Guys, I'm not sick, I'm healthy. I refuse to speak that into existence or give it life, but I have been fighting it off, doing all the remedies I can think of, drinking lots of water, trying to get as much rest as possible. And honestly, this has low-key been a long time coming, the last couple months with everything that's been going on. It's really been busy nonstop, and this definitely has been a semester where I have not had a consistent sleep pattern, and definitely my body is taking a toll on it, and clearly also my immune system is taking a hit right now. And so it's definitely my body's way of telling me, you need a rest, you need to give it time to take inventory on my condition, which is why I posed this question to you guys today, because I really do think sometimes, especially if you're someone like me who can get so wrapped up on the events and the busyness of life, that you forget to really check in with yourself and see how you're doing mentally, physically, and making sure that you are working at optimal condition and not just burning yourself to the ground. That's how we get burnt out. And I feel like I've been feeling a bit burnt out probably since after spring break, to be really honest with you guys. I've been getting to that point of like, I'm so over it, I'm ready to be done. And so that's very telling that my condition right now is not one of optimalness, if that's even a word, but it's definitely showed me, especially with me not feeling my best right now, you know what? Let's pause for a moment and let's check in with ourselves. Let's take some inventory and see what is our condition. And if we're going to be checking in on our condition, it's important that we are using the right measurement. We are not measuring our condition by what our social media looks like, what our outcomes have been, whether you've reached goals and completed them, whether you've been really productive the last week, or even how well you've been showing up for other people. Like, those are things that we can't use to measure our condition, though we often default to using those kinds of measurements. But if we're really going to understand what is our current condition right now, we have to take a moment and look at the condition of our heart, of our mind, of our body, and our soul. And that requires us really sitting down honestly with ourselves and reflecting and just being intuitive to ourselves. I know that I can struggle with that, being aware of myself and my needs. And when I'm running low on gas, I'm really intuitive when it comes to others, but can struggle with that with myself. And so I'm trying to improve in that. But it's really important that we do that so that we are able to check in on our condition and see where we're at, so that we can ensure that we are taking the necessary steps to better ourselves. And even finding time to do that, to take that inventory, is really difficult. And I think the reason why it's difficult because we live in a world that really glamorizes hustle, being busy, always grinding, always producing. There is this pressure to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep performing, whether that's academically, with your friends, with your family, social media, whatever it may be. But somewhere along the line, we stop paying attention to what that constant output is actually costing us. And I remember one particular day where I was feeling a bit burnt out, where the Holy Spirit really deposited this into me, and I wrote it down right after. But it was that overuse does not equal productivity. And when he gave me that, it actually set me into this whole deep dive tangent spiral to really unravel and understand what that statement meant, because what do you mean overuse does not equal productivity? What do you mean if I'm working constantly nonstop, I expect produce, I expect there to be this great produce to equal the amount of input that I'm putting into this. I need my output to equal that. In actuality, overuse does not mean that you are going to have an equal level of productivity and that your outcome will actually equal the amount of input that you're putting into it. Just because you're always doing something doesn't mean you're doing it well. Just because you're always moving doesn't mean you're moving in the right direction. And I think about athletes when it comes to this, and I have come to notice through recording this podcast that my mind works a lot in analogies, which has been really interesting to kind of discover about myself. But in saying this, I think about athletes because when athletes are training, it's not just about how hard they work, it's about how well they recover. They will tell you recovery is probably one of the most important things, if not the most important thing, when it comes to their training. And the reason for that is that overuse injuries happen when you train without rest. And those kind of injuries can cost them their career. If they kept on training nonstop, kept pushing themselves without taking time to heal, recharge, and strengthen, they are putting themselves at an increased risk to experience injury and actually do more harm to themselves than good. And though I am no pro athlete, it's the same thing for us in our own everyday lives. If we keep working, pouring out, stretching ourselves thin, but we're not paying attention to our condition, we're not checking in with the state of our soul, similar to how athletes are putting themselves, if they do that, at an increased risk for injury, we are putting ourselves at an increased risk for injury, whether that physically, emotionally, mentally, or spiritually. And I am speaking from experience, so though I am no pro athlete, I can give an example for this. So I have flat feet, and my flat feet have never really been that much of a problem for me until I started doing my clinical rotations. And so with doing that, I'm on my feet 12 hours a day nonstop. And I found that in doing that, and also because I wouldn't really take time to rest my feet either, or elevate them when I would get back, or ice them, I wouldn't do any of those things that were necessary to help my feet recover from such a long and taxing day. Over time, had more and more pain and injury, and it became really difficult to continually function the way that I did, and I ended up having to go to an orthopedic, and it was a whole thing. But I say that to say that if I just took a moment to take inventory on my condition during that time and be like, you know what, let's pause for a second, Fortune. Let's figure out ways that we can actually maybe strengthen this area, further support our feet. Maybe that means investing in new shoes. Maybe that means after work, giving it an ice bath, whatever you need to do to recover so that you make sure that you're working at optimal level. Because when I didn't do that and I was experiencing this increasing pain, it made it difficult for me to be beneficial and effective in my workspace. Like I was, but I was just in such pain that like I even started to like dread going to work because I didn't want to experience that. And in doing so, right, not taking that time to check my condition, I realized that I was drained, I was weary, I was working from a place of depletion and didn't even realize it. Which is why I think that today's conversation is really important, because we want to prevent ourselves from getting to that point of depletion, because your condition influences your outcome. You can't produce from a depleted place. You can't give people your best when you're running on empty. You can't pour into your calling, your relationships, or even your own healing and growth when you're living in a constant state of overuse. And I actually have another analogy, guys, to relate to this, and it's one that some of you guys probably might already be familiar with, but it's the charger analogy. But those of you who haven't, how the analogy goes is that if you think about your phone, you don't wait until your phone is completely dead before you charge it. Some of us, the second your phone hits 20%, that's when you're scrambling to find your charger. Others, you might plug it in when it's at 50%, or if you're like me, you might even just start charging it once it's at 80%, because you know that it functions best when it's fully charged. how we can relate that analogy back to ourselves is that how often do we neglect to do that with ourselves? How often do we wait until we're completely empty, physically, emotionally, all the things before we finally stop and take the time to recharge? Because let's be honest, if we were running on 10%, 5% all the time, we would have nothing to give. Like the kind of work, the kind of outcome that we would put out would be terrible quality, if we're being quite honest. It wouldn't even be the best of our abilities or our capacity. And you want to know why? It's because we weren't designed to live on empty. We weren't designed to live from this space of depletion, of overuse. We were not created to function like machines that never stop, right? We are meant to have rest too. Like it's important for us to also prioritize rest. And that is actually crazy to say because we really do live in a society now that's like 24/7, whether that's work, whether you're up all night, like people do not get enough sleep. On average, people are probably getting 4 to 6 hours of sleep when statistically men should be getting 8 hours of sleep and women should be getting 10 hours of sleep. But are any of us really reaching that? No. But here's the thing with that. It is not really benefiting any of us either because we find that in our society now, people are experiencing higher rates of burnout and exhaustion and weariness, like just not being able to really work to their fullest potential or ability because we're not having those times of renewal and recovery, and you get burnt out, you get tired. And I wonder if as a society, if we prioritized rest more and integrated it more into our day-to-day lives, like how they do in Spain. They literally have a certain time set aside in the day where everyone has to stop doing work and take a nap because they have come to realize that rest is important. It's so crucial. Like even in the workspace, once it hits that time for them to nap, everyone naps, you stop doing your work because recovery, rest, it actually research and statistically in those countries like Spain that do that, the level of work has increased dramatically, like engagement, work culture, community. It has been even more beneficial to them to integrate that level of rest and recovery. And what that says to me is that they have gotten really good at taking the time to understand the condition. And because they took that time to understand their condition, they implemented strategies and interventions to actually help them improve their condition and make sure that it's always at a point of optimal level. And that makes sense because in Genesis chapter 2, God literally rested on the seventh day. And it's not like God needs rest. He actually doesn't sleep. It states that in his word. So if God is not sleeping, then why would he create and dedicate a whole day to rest when he doesn't need it? It's because rest is for us. We need rest. And God saw that. He foresaw that we would need a day to rest and to recover because we cannot live without doing that. Psalm 23 states, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. And when I really think about that chapter and that specific verse in that chapter, what it's led me to understand is that we will encounter things in life that would require us to be restored, to have to find rest. And so it's really important that we prioritize this aspect of our life. If God literally dedicated a whole day, if he has made it so abundantly clear to us that this is something that we cannot miss out on, this is something that we cannot put to the side. I mean, it's literally one of the 10 commandments, the Sabbath day, the day of rest. He literally made it a commandment for us to rest. He commanded us to find times in our lives, in our week, in our days for rest because he understood before we understood, before we even knew that you will experience things that will cause you to grow weary in your condition. You will experience things that will do some tear and some wear and some damage to your condition, and you are going to need to set aside time to rest, to recover, to heal, and renew your condition back to optimal state so that you can go ahead and continue to do the good things I have called for you to do. You have to be at optimal condition. Furthermore, within that verse, I find it interesting how it says that he makes us lie down in green pastures. Like makes as in there's a level of maybe that wasn't my choice that I'm lying down in green pastures right now besides still waters, but that he had to make me do that. And sometimes God has to make us stop, make us rest, make us recover because we don't do it all the time on our own. We're not always so intuitive to our body and where we're at and what level we're operating from, but he is. We'll keep running, keep grinding, keep pushing. Honestly, some of us until we nearly collapse. And there has been so many times where God had to make me lie down. I remember when someone one time said to me that they believe that sometimes when they get sick, that it's God's way of telling them that they need to rest. Because when you're sick, you can't do anything. You don't feel up to it. Like you're just a snotty nose, head pounding, throat sore, coughing mess. Like you don't have time to do anything. Like you literally have to rest because no one likes being sick. And it forces you to this place of needing to rest. And that really stuck with me, though I don't believe that God gives us sicknesses and diseases because that does not come from him. He heals us from them. I do see where they were coming from, where it's like sometimes God has to make us lie down and have rest. And though in the past, God has had to do that with me many times, I don't want that to be the case anymore. I want to learn how to pay attention to my condition right now before I burn out, before I hit empty, before I'm operating from this place of depletion, because that is going to affect my outcome. And when we ignore our condition, that's when overuse starts to take its toll on every area of our life. For example, I'm operating from this place of overuse spiritually. I might be too tired to pray, too distracted to read my Bible, and I can start feeling disconnected from God. If we're thinking about it emotionally, I can be more irritable, more anxious. I can feel more numb or overstimulated. If you think about it in regards to mentally, I won't be able to focus, right? My mind would be all over the place. I'll feel overwhelmed. I'm exhausted. And I'll constantly be thinking about how exhausted I am. Or if we even think about it in the physical sense, my body will feel tired. It will be sluggish. It will be run down. And if you are currently experiencing some of these signs, because I know that I am, you are operating from a place of overuse, and it's time for you to get some rest. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's time for both you and me. I'm also speaking to myself to get some rest. And that's a good thing about rest, about taking time to recover and heal and rejuvenate yourself, because it means that you don't have to stay in this place of overuse. And it's because God cares more about your condition than your productivity. The reason why is, one, he loves us. 2, salvation, our relationship with God, none of that comes by works. It comes by who he is in his nature. So genuinely, God cares more about our condition than our productivity. He's not impressed by how busy we are. He's not impressed by our to-do list and how many checks we have marked off. Like, he is constantly invested in our heart, in the condition of our heart and of our mind and our body. And he's constantly seeking to make sure that we are living from a place of fullness rather than a place of emptiness. Every empty cup, the Lord seeks to fill it, and not just fill it, but cause it to overflow. So if you are experiencing that right now, go rest, go recover, because he wants to bring you into a place where he is going to allow your cup to be filled so you're no longer empty, so that you will experience overflow, so that your condition will be more than optimal. Your condition will be more than great. Your condition will be the best it's ever been. That is what he desires. And I know that because in Matthew 11:28, he literally says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, I will give you rest." That's the invitation. He's not asking you to perform or to do all these things. He's just asking you to come and lay it down, to lay yourself down, because sometimes we gotta lay ourselves down, right? At his feet, where you will find rest, where there is rest awaiting you. All right, we talked about the importance of checking your condition, the importance of prioritizing rest, but how do we make this practical? Because we need interventions, we need strategies to ensure that when we notice that we are not working at our best, that we are are not at our optimal condition, we need ways that we can improve it and return back to that point. And so how we can do this is by first being intentional about taking inventory, like taking moments, whether that's throughout your day or throughout your week, just setting aside a time to check in with yourself and be like, how am I feeling mentally? How am I feeling emotionally? How am I feeling physically? Am I noticing those signs of burnout approaching upon me? And if I am, that means I need to start taking steps, maneuvering things in my schedule, maybe even reassessing my priorities right now and intentionally setting aside time to rest. I know for me, I try to really make Sundays or at least one day out of my week, and sometimes it's not always Sunday, but one day out of my week to be a day where I really just rot in bed, like where I just, and I'm trying not to say rot anymore, I'm trying to say thrive, but like where I basically just allow myself to rest and relax. And it's kind of hard because I really am someone who constantly is like, I need to be stimulated, I need to be doing something, I need to be busy, because if I'm not, like I am being useless right now. But that is a lie. Your rest is just as useful and just as beneficial and just as needed as your productivity and your work, if not more. So really doing that, or if I really am having a crazy, insane, busy week, I try to set aside some time at the end of each day, maybe an hour or two, to really just be intentional about resting, whether that's winding down with a show, drawing, listening to music, having a little dance party in my room, like whatever that is, to really take that time to rest and improve my condition. Now, what I just talked about, the example I gave of how I try to incorporate rest and prioritizing that in my everyday life so that I can continue to make sure that I'm not operating from this place of overuse and depletion, is one that is more physical, but we have to really cater to every single areas of our life. And so in terms of spiritually, I really do intentionally set aside every single morning to the Lord and spending time with Him, because He is a place where I actually have true and proper rest, and He restores, renews, and rejuvenates every single part of my being. And so really spending time with Him and making sure that time isn't rushed or transactional, and really just putting that time to really be with my Father and sit at His feet is really beneficial to me, and ensuring that not only spiritually I am doing my best, but honestly, when I do that, because I have started my day like that, started off my mornings with the Lord and being with Him and being in His Word, it really helps me to go about the rest of my day. My optimal functioning is at the highest when I do that, and I find that it's easier the rest of my day to maintain that kind of level of steadiness and productivity throughout, because in my weakness He is strong, He renews my strength, and so I see that throughout the day. And so I really do implore that and encourage that for you guys as well, when it comes to really setting aside that time to check in and making sure that you are doing what you can to have the best condition possible for yourself. Other ways we can do this, because also I am someone who can be a social butterfly, but I really in my core am an introvert, so I can have my social battery run dry. And if you're anything like me, you definitely need that time of rest and recovery and just away from people when you've gotten to that point. And so ways that we can do this is honestly setting boundaries. If you need to skip out on a hangout or a massive group gathering so that you can stay inside and be with yourself all day, do that. Do that. You're not a terrible person for that. You're not a terrible friend for that. Because if you show up there, you are gonna be the party pooper. You are not gonna be any fun. Like, everyone's gonna be like, why are you so down? Like, I know that especially when I get to those points, people will ask me, like, are you upset? Are you angry? Like, what's going on? Because I'll be really quiet. Quiet as a church mouse. Not social at all. And it's not because I'm even upset or because like I'm bothered by anything. Like, I really am not. Like, I just end up kind of being absorbed in my own world and mind. Like, low-key, I kind of space out. Genuinely, I need rest. Like, genuinely, when people ask me that, my response is I'm tired. And it's literally that. I'm tired. this is not recharging my social battery at all. Like, I need time away from people. I need time to rest. Right now, my condition is not optimal and it's not fun. Honestly, I probably am not the most fun person to be around when I'm in those kinds of states, because I'm a fun person, guys. I'm a good time. But when I'm in those states, like, I've had people literally say to me, like, where's our sunshine go? Like, where's our happy girl go? And like, it's not that I'm sad and it's not that I'm not happy. And I do have my own qualms about that, because I'm like, I don't always need to be so energetic and peppy, like sometimes I just like to be quiet and be a background character. Like, sometimes I like to do that for myself. Again, putting in those boundaries, not feeling bad about it. Like, I don't feel bad about it anymore. Like, I think at some point I used to feel bad about it. I feel like I always had to put on. But if I don't gotta put on, if I don't have to do this because of a commitment that I made, I'm gonna be quiet as a church mouse and just chill. Or I'm just gonna stay at home if my presence isn't needed. So those are just some ways that I personally do that, and ways that I like to put in those boundaries. And maybe you can implement them for yourself as well. Or you might be someone who gets really recharged by being around other people. And so go and set aside time to hang out with your friends, go to a movie. Like, the weather is getting so much better and so much more beautiful outside. The sun is shining, like my skin is glowing, the vitamin D is really kicking in. So go and have a picnic with your friends. Like, go spend time with your loved ones, people who you haven't been able to really connect with for a really long time because you've just been so locked in doing work. Like, that is another way that you can really rejuvenate yourself and find that rest, because you're spending time with people who you care about and care about you too. And another way, and something that I have been incorporating since 2020, so the pandemic, honestly, is unplugging from social media. I personally haven't been able to do that in quite some time now because of commitments that I have that require me to have my social media account active. But before that, I would literally go on breaks from all forms of social media, except for maybe Pinterest, because I just love Pinterest so much. But I would literally like go off of TikTok, go off of Instagram, like, because those are the only really like social media platforms I have. I don't really count Pinterest, but okay, Pinterest too. And I just go off of it. And the first week it's a little hard, but a month in, and I honestly don't even feel like re-downloading it. Like, I've gone months without my social media before. Of course, now with the things that I do, it's not, necessarily as possible anymore. But once I graduate, like, I definitely want to set aside time to just unplug completely from social media. Just completely unplug. It is so beneficial for my mental health, and I'm not scrolling as much. I find that I can be more productive. It's such a weird thing that happens, but I definitely recommend it if you have never tried that before. But just unplugging from social media, I'm telling you, is something that would definitely change your life. Like, I really do believe it is something that will change your life, and another way that we can take care of our condition and make sure that we are functioning at the best level that we can. So those were some practical steps for you guys in helping you prioritize rest and be intentional about being aware of your condition and where you're currently operating from, and constantly seeking to do that each and every single day, and just make it a daily habit in your life to do that. And the thing about taking care of your condition that's so amazing is that everything else flows from that place. And so your creativity, your energy, your relationships, your faith, it all thrives when you're operating from this place of wholeness. So as we start to wrap this conversation up, I want to circle back to the question that I posed at the very beginning to you guys and to myself, which is, what is your condition? I hope that throughout this conversation, you've actually been able to take some time to take some inventory on yourself and see where you are at right now, and see if maybe you are working at your optimal condition. Maybe you're just really good at prioritizing rest and recovery. Or maybe you're someone like me who's still learning how to do that, day by day, growing better at incorporating that and ensuring that you are able to show up as your best self while taking care of yourself so you can be your best self. And I hope through this conversation, you are able to take away the fact that we are meant to live full, whole, rested, and connected to the source, which is God, at all times. So if you haven't, Take inventory today, check your condition, and if you find that you're empty, weary, or running on fumes, know that you don't have to stay there. Our God has created a place for us to have rest, and He is more than able and more than ready to restore, to refill, and to lay us down in green pastures because He loves us too much to leave us depleted. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of Still Learning. I hope this conversation gave you permission to pause, to breathe, and to remember that your well-being matters to God. He invites you to rest, to restore, and to live from a place of wholeness, not emptiness. If this episode resonated with you, please share with a friend, and if you're not already, make sure to follow @StillLearningPod on Instagram. I'd love to hear your thoughts and continue this conversation with you. And if you're enjoying the podcast, leave a rating or review. It helps others find this podcast and keep this community growing. Also, let me know how I can make this space better because I'm still learning too. And remember, what it is now is not what it will always be or what it will become. Stay encouraged, stay rooted in truth, and I'll see you next time for another episode of Still Learning.